Polacy są wszędzie. Ja muszę uważać. And it's probably more suitable today to talk about other things than European history. But I'll quickly mention what that lecture was about, because it may be of some interest. European history is usually seen around the world, either from the view of nations that were colonized by the Europeans. For example, Kuala Lumpur. The British were in Malaysia, and they look at European history through the eyes of people who were colonized by a European nation. Singapore, India, above all. In India, I was born when Delhi was in the British Empire, so it's all gone. But their view of European history is through the eyes of the Europeans who came to them. And quite often their memories are negative for a variety of reasons. For example, in Tasmania, I was in Tasmania, the entire population died as a result of the arrival of Europeans, the British, but mainly from disease. Europeans brought diseases with them which were unfamiliar, and whole populations were wiped out by this disease. So quite often their memories are very negative. And what I was trying to tell them was that European history is much bigger than the history of the relations between the colonies and the various empires of Western Europe. For example, I told them that several parts of Europe, like Eastern Europe, like Poland, were colonized by empires. The Russian Empire was the biggest empire in the history of the world. Russia is still the largest history in the world, and yet it doesn't seem to be included in the history of imperialism. It's always outside. So I was telling them that I was in no way apologizing for the history of European empires, but I was saying that the story is much bigger than you may think if you live in wherever, Malaya or New Zealand or Tahiti, of course with French. Can you imagine that French Polynesia, where I've been, is bigger than the whole of Europe? The surface area is bigger than the whole of Europe, and it consists of 118 islands scattered around its vast area. Anyhow, that's quite apart. Well, so much for my little lecture about Europe, European Union, and Poland is an active member of NATO, i.e. it's an ally of the United States. The people who try to tell us that Poland is in terrible danger from one direction or another. I'll just mention, give you a little picture of what part Poland played today. On the 9th of May, which is 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was in New Zealand, and it was Europe Day. The 9th of May is the end of the Second World War in Europe. It's the end of the war. It's a reason why the European movement has started, so that conflict of that sort will never happen again. And every 9th of May, a Europe Day is held in all the countries connected. And in New Zealand, they had a little festival, and I was invited to talk to all the ambassadors of the European countries in Wellington. And it was in a very grand residence of the French ambassador. But there was the Polish ambassador, lady ambassador, there was the lady British representative, very interesting lady of Chinese origin from Hong Kong. There was, of course, the Frenchman who was presiding, the Dutchman, the German. The Polish representative was an equal partner of all the European countries, and this is a huge change. It's not very long ago where no Polish representative would have been present. The Poles would have had no voice in the councils of the international community, but now Poland is playing its full place. Now, a little switch. I think it's important.